Is there something that your top achievers do, that you work with, that you talk with, that you interact with, that the people that aren't achieving at their level do? I know that's a broad question, but does something come to your mind where you go, yep, this is what they do?
Yep. Yeah, no, I'll give you two things. So first thing is we could put this different ways, but they reclaim their habits faster than most people, or they get back on track quickly. So top performers make mistakes like everybody else. And I think most of us know this or have felt this from going through life, which is it's almost never the first mistake that ruins you. It's the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. It's like it's letting slipping up become a new habit. That is the real problem. And if you make one mistake, you miss a workout or you miss a deadline or you flop on a speech or a presentation, if you get back on track quickly, if the next time, the next iteration, you don't miss and you're right back where you were before, then your progress is generally maintained and you can just continue to advance from there. But if you miss a workout and then one missed workout becomes 2 weeks and that becomes 2 months, well, now all of a sudden you have backslided a fair amount and you got to regain all that ground. And so I would say, another way to think about this is like a lot of people are focused on what can I achieve on my best day? And that's kind of how they select their habits. Like, what's the best thing I could do when I'm at my best? But instead, you could ask yourself, what can I stick to even on my worst day? And I think that could be your baseline. And if you try to raise that baseline a little bit so that your bad days are a little bit better than they were before, then you never eat in to the compounding as much. You don't lose that progress as much. So I think that's pretty good. They respond from mistakes quickly. And then the second thing is more of a mantra or mindset, a way to think about things than a specific action. But this is a phrase that comes from Frank Slootman. He's the CEO of Snowflake, the software company. And basically it's something to the effect of narrow the focus, up the quality, increase the speed. So narrow the focus, do less, stop trying to do so much. It's very hard to be, we could maybe even say it's impossible to be a top performer in a dozen different things. Like you have to choose what matters most. So do less, narrow the focus, up the quality. Once you have selected those few things that truly matter, do them at an exceptional degree, right? Do them in a very high level way. And then finally, increase the speed. Only once you have selected a few things to focus on and you do them at a high level, then you can worry about shipping more consistently or increasing the volume or scaling the project or whatever. And those are simple ideas, but I think that top performers take those simple ideas very seriously. And you'd be surprised how far they can take you if you do take them seriously. When I was starting out, one of the best things that somebody said to me early on was try things until something comes easily. And I think if you break that phrase down, there are two important pieces. The first is trying things, which means you need to have a philosophy of experimentation. This is actually quite different than what a lot of people do when they start out. A lot of people feel like what they need to do is read more and research more and try to, discover everything that's out there. And it's not that you shouldn't plan. It's not that preparation isn't useful. It is useful. But at some point, planning becomes its own form of procrastination. And when that happens, it's not useful anymore. And so you have to have some willingness to experiment, to try things, to test stuff out and see what works specifically for you. What matters most is not if it's like the best strategy that's ever been designed. What matters is, will it work for you and for your situation? And you can only figure that out by experimenting. So that's the first part. And then the second piece is until something comes easily. Now, the key distinction here is that does not mean that it is easy, right? It doesn't mean that it's going simply or smoothly. It just means that the results are coming more easily than the other stuff that you had tried. You may still have to work very hard to get that outcome. This, I also think, helps reveal like your strengths in the situation. So a lot of people think like your strengths are just something that like must come effortlessly to you or something. But actually, in many cases, your strength is the thing that's challenging or the suffering or the pain that you can handle better than most people. So it's not that it's not challenging for you. It's just that you seem to be able to handle that form of pain a little bit better than most people. And I think if you look at a lot of top performers, they're like that. It's not that athletes aren't working hard. It's not that they're not sweating. It's not that it's not tough to be in the gym and like doing the next rep. It's just that they can kind of handle that pain, like that form of suffering isn't that bad for them relative to the average person. And so you're looking for those two qualities, a philosophy of experimentation and the ability to get results in a way that allows you to handle that struggle a little bit better than others. There's a chapter in the book called The Secret to Self-Control, and I talk about some of the studies and research around willpower and so on. And one of the key findings is that people who exhibit high willpower, who appear on the surface to have a great deal of willpower, the primary thing that is different between them and people who appear to have low levels of willpower is that they are in environments where they are tempted less. So their environment is primed for them to be high willpower. And I think that alone should inform a lot of your strategy. Again, how do we stack the deck in your favor? How do you design an environment where you don't need to be a superhero just to get something done? You know, like if you're constantly putting yourself in a tough position where you're fighting against the friction of the environment you're in, it's almost like a form of gravity. You know, it sort of pulls you toward it. If I could pick one topic that I think is even more important than I realized when I wrote the book, I would probably say it's this. You know, we are all part of multiple tribes. Some of those tribes are large, like what it means to be American or what it means to be French. And some of those tribes are smaller, like what it means to be a neighbor on your street or a member of the local CrossFit gym or a volunteer at the elementary school or whatever. But all of those tribes, all those groups that you belong to, they have a set of shared expectations, a set of social norms for how you act in that group and the type of habits that you perform. And like if we take the neighbor on your street example, and say you walk outside on like Tuesday night and you see that your neighbor's mowing their grass or cutting their lawn, and you're like, oh, I need to mow the grass too. Well, you might stick to that habit for 20 or 30 or 40 years, like however long you live in that house. You wish you had that level of consistency with some of your other habits. And why do you do it? Partially you do it because it feels good to have a clean lawn, but mostly it feels good to have a clean lawn because you don't want to be judged by the other people in the neighborhood for being the sloppy one. And so it's actually the social expectation of that group, of that tribe of neighbors on your street, that's kind of underlying that habit and the consistency that you have. And so the expectations of the group often influence in a very strong way which habits we find attractive and which ones we find unattractive and which ones we stick to consistently and which ones we don't. And I think the practical takeaway here, the punchline is you want to join groups where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. Because if you're surrounded by people who are doing that thing on a normal basis, it's a part of that tribe's culture or expectation, it suddenly becomes much easier for you to stick to that too.